I couldn't believe what was happening. There I was, sitting in my living room scrolling through my phone when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a stranger standing there, a smug look on his face. He was tall, muscular, and looked like he belonged on the cover of a men's fitness magazine. Before I could ask who he was, he spoke up with a confidence that left me stunned. "I'm going to ask Rose out and entertain her till morning," he said, his tone casual, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. I was speechless. Rose, my wife, had never mentioned anything about going out, let alone with a stranger. As if on cue, she appeared at the top of the stairs, dressed in a short, revealing dress that hugged her curves. She had a mischievous smile on her face, one that I hadn't seen in years. It was the kind of smile that made you question everything. "I'm going out. Don't expect me for dinner, darling," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm and defiance. She walked down the stairs, her heels clicking against the wooden steps, each step echoing the reality of the situation. "Rose, what the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and confusion. She just laughed, a cold, dismissive laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just a little fun. I'll be back, eventually." My response was immediate. I grabbed her arm, trying to stop her from leaving. "You can't just walk out like this. What about us? What about our marriage?" She pulled her arm free with surprising strength and looked at me with disdain. "Our marriage? Oh, please. You really think there's anything left to salvage? You're so naive, it's almost cute." The stranger, still standing in the doorway, watched the exchange with a bemused expression. "Ready to go, Rose?" he asked, clearly enjoying the drama. "Absolutely," she replied, turning away from me without a second glance. They walked out the door together, leaving me standing there, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. As the door closed behind them, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and a deep, gnawing sadness. This was not the Rose I knew. Or maybe it was, and I had just been blind to it all these years. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife was cheating on me, and she didn't even care to hide it. I sat down, trying to process what had just happened. How had things gotten so bad? We'd been married for 10 years, and while things hadn't always been perfect, I never imagined it would come to this. I thought about all the little lies, the late-night work meetings, the sudden interest in going to the gym. It all made sense now. But this wasn't just about tonight. This was about all the time she had deceived me, made me feel like a fool. And I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. There would be more lies, more betrayals, and I would have to face them all. As I sat there, a cold determination settled over me. This wasn't going to break me. If Rose wanted to play games, then I would play too. But I would do it my way. I would find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And I would make sure that, in the end, she would be the one left standing alone. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The events of the previous night replayed in my mind, and the anger and betrayal washed over me all over again. I couldn't let this go on. I needed to know the extent of Rose's deceit. I decided to take a day off work to figure things out. As I sipped my coffee, I grabbed Rose's laptop and phone. She had left them behind, assuming I wouldn't dare invade her privacy. Well, she had underestimated me. I started with her laptop, combing through emails and social media accounts. There was nothing too incriminating at first, just the usual correspondence with friends and colleagues. But then, I found a hidden folder on her desktop. It was labeled Work Stuff, but inside were dozens of photos and videos of her with various men, none of whom I recognized. Each image was like a punch to the gut. There she was, smiling and laughing with strangers, looking happier than she ever did with me. I felt sick to my stomach but forced myself to keep going. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. Switching to her phone, I found a string of messages with a contact saved as James Jim. The messages were explicit, detailing their encounters and making plans for future rendezvous. They had been seeing each other for months. James was the stranger who had come to pick her up last night. I couldn't believe how blind I had been. All those nights she said she was going to the gym, She was actually meeting him. The realization hit me hard. Rose had been lying to me for a long time, and I'd been too trusting to see it. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Rose. "Won't be home tonight, staying at a friend's." I almost laughed at the audacity of it. She didn't even bother to come up with a new lie. I decided it was time to confront her, but I needed a plan. I called my best friend, Mark. He had been my confidant for years, and I trusted him completely. When I told him what had happened, he was furious on my behalf. "That bitch," he said, his voice seething with anger. "You need to get out of there, man. You deserve better." "I know," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "But I need to figure out my next steps. I can't just leave without a plan." Mark agreed to meet me later that day to discuss everything. In the meantime, I decided to do some more digging. I logged into our joint bank account and noticed several large withdrawals over the past few months. Rose had been siphoning money into a separate account. She was planning to leave me, and she was taking everything she could. The betrayal cut even deeper now. Not only was she cheating on me, but she was also preparing to abandon me completely. I felt a surge of determination. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I needed to protect myself and my future. That afternoon, I met Mark at a local cafe. We sat in a corner booth, and I laid everything out for him. The cheating, the lies, the money. He listened intently, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're right," he said finally. "You need to protect yourself. First thing you should do is see a lawyer. Get some legal advice on how to handle this. And you need to secure your finances." I nodded, grateful for his support. "I'll do that. Thanks, Mark. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Don't mention it," he said, clapping me on the back. "We're going to get through this together." After leaving the cafe, I went straight to the bank and opened a new account in my name only. I transferred what I could from our joint account, leaving enough to cover any immediate expenses. Then I contacted a lawyer, explaining the situation and setting up a meeting for the next day. As I drove home, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, but also a sense of empowerment. I was taking control of my life, and I wasn't going to let Rose's lies destroy me. When I got home, the house was eerily quiet. Rose's absence was palpable, and for the first time I felt a sense of peace. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was ready to face it. I would find out just how deep her deceit went, and I would come out stronger on the other side. A few weeks passed, and the divorce proceedings were moving along smoothly, thanks in large part to the evidence Rachel had provided. Rose was livid, of course, but there was little she could do to fight back. I had her backed into a corner, and for once, it felt like I had the upper hand. One evening, as I was packing up more of Rose's things to send over to her new place, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Rachel. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the cafe in an hour." My heart skipped a beat. What could be so urgent? I grabbed my jacket and headed out, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived at the cafe, Rachel was already there, a worried look on her face. She waved me over, and I sat down across from her, feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Rachel leaned in, lowering her voice. "I found out something that you need to know. It's about James. He's not just some random guy who happened to seduce Rose. There's more to it than that." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "James has been targeting women like Rose for years. He's a professional gigolo." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "What? Are you serious?" Rachel nodded. "Yes. He preys on lonely, vulnerable women, gets them to fall for him, and then extorts them for money. It's all a game to him. I did some digging after we last talked, and I found out that he has a history of this. He changes his identity frequently to avoid getting caught, but there are records of his activities in several states." I felt a surge of anger and disgust. "So he used Rose to get to me? To get to our money?" "Exactly," Rachel said. "And he's not going to stop. He's probably already moved on to his next target, but I think we can stop him." "How?" I asked, feeling a spark of hope. "We gather all the evidence we can and go to the authorities," Rachel explained. With what we have, plus the testimonies of other victims I've found, we can build a solid case against him. We can expose him for what he really is and make sure he can't hurt anyone else. I nodded, determined. Let's do it. I'm all in. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence against James. We reached out to other women he had targeted, and many of them were willing to share their stories. It was heartbreaking to hear how many lives he had ruined, but it also fueled my determination to bring him down. One evening, as we were going through some documents, Rachel looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. "You're really strong, you know that? Most people would have crumbled under the weight of all this." I shrugged, feeling a bit embarrassed. "I don't know about that. I've had my moments." She reached out and placed a hand on mine. "No, seriously. You've handled all of this with so much grace and strength. It's inspiring." Her words touched me more than I expected. "Thanks, Rachel. I couldn't have done it without you." We shared a moment of silence, the air between us charged with unspoken emotions. Then Rachel cleared her throat and pulled her hand away. "Anyway, we should get back to work. We've got a lot to do." As we continued our investigation, I found myself growing closer to Rachel. She was smart, resourceful, and fiercely determined, and she had a kindness to her that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I started to realize that my feelings for her were becoming more than just gratitude. One night, after a particularly long day of work, Rachel and I went out for dinner to celebrate a breakthrough in our case. Over a bottle of wine, we laughed and shared stories about our lives before all of this chaos. "You know," Rachel said, smiling at me, "I never thought I'd be doing something like this. But I'm glad I met you, Alex, even under these circumstances." "I'm glad I met you too," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I don't know what I would have done without you." As the night went on, the atmosphere between us shifted. There was a tension, an unspoken connection that neither of us could ignore. When we finally said goodnight, there was a lingering moment where we both hesitated, our eyes locked. "Good night, Rachel," I said softly, my heart pounding. "Good night, Alex," she replied, her voice just as soft. As I walked away, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Despite all the pain and betrayal, there was something good coming out of this, and I was ready to embrace it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Rachel and I continued to gather evidence against James, working late into the night. We managed to track down several more of his victims, each one adding a new piece to the puzzle. With each new testimony, our case grew stronger. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some documents, I received a call from my lawyer. "Alex, I've got some good news," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "We have enough evidence to move forward with criminal charges against James. The authorities are very interested in your case." I felt a rush of relief. "That's amazing. What happens next?" "They'll issue a warrant for his arrest. Once he's in custody, he'll face charges for fraud, extortion, and several other offenses. This should make your divorce proceedings much smoother as well. Rose won't be able to claim ignorance about his activities." I thanked her and hung up, a sense of satisfaction settling over me. James was finally going to face justice. That evening, I met up with Rachel to share the news. We celebrated with a bottle of champagne, toasting to our success. As the night wore on, our conversation turned more personal. "So, what's next for you, Alex?" Rachel asked, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. I shrugged, feeling a bit uncertain. "I guess I'll try to move on, find a new place, start over. It's not going to be easy, but I think I'm ready." She nodded, a thoughtful look on her face. "You deserve to be happy, you know. You've been through so much, but you've come out stronger." Her words meant a lot to me. "Thanks, Rachel. I couldn't have done it without you." We fell into a comfortable silence, the connection between us growing stronger with each passing moment. Eventually, Rachel broke the silence. "There's something I've been wanting to tell you." I looked at her, curious. "What is it?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I've developed feelings for you, Alex. I know this is probably the worst timing, but I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. Her confession took me by surprise, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted. I feel the same way, Rachel. I've been scared to say anything because of everything that's been happening, but I can't deny it anymore. We both laughed, the tension between us dissolving into something warm and real. So, what do we do now? Rachel asked, her eyes hopeful. I think we take it one step at a time, I said, reaching out to hold her hand. We've been through a lot together, and I don't want to rush things, but I do want to see where this goes. Rachel smiled, her grip tightening on my hand. I'd like that too. The days that followed were a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The authorities moved quickly, and within a week, James was arrested. The news spread fast, and soon everyone knew about his deceitful activities. Rose was forced to confront the reality of her involvement with him, and it didn't take long for her to realize the full extent of her mistakes. One evening, as I was packing up the last of Rose's things, she showed up at the house. She looked disheveled and defeated, a far cry from the confident woman who had walked out on me weeks before. "Alex, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I sighed, setting down the box I was holding. "What is it, Rose?" She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for everything. I was stupid and selfish, and I let myself get manipulated by James. I never meant for things to get this bad." I listened, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to move on from the pain she had caused. But another part of me knew that too much had happened, and there was no going back. "Rose, I appreciate your apology," I said finally. "But it's too late. Our marriage is over. You made your choices, and now we both have to live with the consequences." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I hope one day you can forgive me." I didn't know if I ever could, but I nodded anyway. "Take care of yourself, Rose." She left, and I felt a sense of closure. This chapter of my life was finally coming to an end, and I was ready to move forward. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I grew closer. We spent a lot of time together, sharing our hopes and dreams, and slowly building a new future. It wasn't always easy, but we supported each other through the ups and downs. One sunny afternoon, as we walked hand in hand through a park, Rachel turned to me with a smile. "You know, I think we're going to be okay." I smiled back, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Yeah, I think we are." As we continued our walk, I couldn't help but feel grateful. Despite all the pain and betrayal, I had found something good, a chance at a new beginning with someone who truly cared for me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. The weeks that followed felt like a blur. With James behind bars and the divorce proceedings nearing completion, life began to settle into a new normal. Rachel and I continued to grow closer, our bond strengthening with each passing day. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally breathe again. One evening, as Rachel and I were having dinner at her place, she brought up an idea that had been lingering in the back of my mind. "Alex," she said, looking at me with those piercing eyes, "have you thought about moving? I mean really moving, starting fresh somewhere new?" I paused, considering her words. "I have, actually. This place holds too many memories, and most of them aren't good. I think a change of scenery could be exactly what I need." Rachel smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I was thinking the same thing. What if we moved together? We could start over, somewhere far away from all the drama and pain." The idea filled me with a sense of excitement and possibility. Where would we go? "I've always loved the coast," she said, her eyes lighting up. "There's something about the ocean that feels so peaceful and healing. What do you think?" The thought of living by the sea, with Rachel by my side, was incredibly appealing. "I think that sounds perfect." We spent the next few days researching coastal towns, eventually settling on a charming place called Seaview. It was a small town with a tight-knit community, beautiful beaches, and a slower pace of life. It felt like the perfect place to start over. As we made plans to move, I realized just how much I had grown and changed over the past few months. I was no longer the broken man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was stronger, more resilient, and ready to embrace whatever the future held. Moving day came quickly. Rachel and I packed up our belongings, said our goodbyes, and hit the road. The drive to Seaview was filled with laughter and excitement, the promise of a new beginning hanging in the air. When we arrived, we were greeted by the sound of waves crashing against the shore and the salty scent of the ocean. It felt like we had stepped into a different world, one where the past no longer had a hold on us. Our new home was a cozy cottage just a short walk from the beach. As we unpacked and settled in, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. This was where we were meant to be. One evening, a few weeks after we had moved, Rachel and I decided to take a walk along the beach. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water. We walked hand in hand, the sand cool beneath our feet. "Alex," Rachel said softly, "I'm so glad we did this. I feel like we have a real chance at happiness here." I smiled, pulling her close. "Me too, Rachel. This is our fresh start, and I'm excited to see where it takes us." As we walked, we talked about our dreams for the future, building a life together, exploring new places, and maybe even starting a family someday. It was a far cry from the darkness and pain that had defined my life just months before. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the beach in shadows, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. The past had a way of creeping back in when you least expected it, and I knew that we weren't completely free of it yet. A few days later, as we were settling into our new routine, I received a call from my lawyer. "Alex, there's been a development," she said, her tone serious. "James is trying to cut a deal. He's willing to provide information on other criminal activities in exchange for a reduced sentence." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What kind of information?" "He's claiming to have knowledge about a larger network of criminals involved in similar schemes. If he's telling the truth, this could lead to a major investigation." I took a deep breath, processing the news. "What does this mean for us?" "It means that things might get complicated," she said. "But it also means that we have a chance to bring down a much larger operation. The authorities are asking for your cooperation in the investigation." I looked over at Rachel, who was watching me with concern. "I'll do whatever it takes to see this through," I said firmly. "Good," my lawyer replied. "I'll keep you updated on the progress. Stay safe, Alex." As I hung up the phone, Rachel came over and wrapped her arms around me. "What happened?" I told her about the call, and her expression grew serious. "Do you think we're in danger?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I won't let anything happen to us. We've come too far to let the past drag us down again." Rachel nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll face this together, Alex. Whatever happens, we have each other." In the weeks that followed, we stayed in close contact with the authorities, providing any information we could to aid the investigation. It was a tense time, but it also brought Rachel and me even closer. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the stars, Rachel turned to me with a smile. "You know, despite everything, I wouldn't change a thing. If it hadn't been for all the pain and betrayal, we might never have found each other." I smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You're right. Everything we've been through has led us here, and I wouldn't trade this for anything." As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our pasts had shaped us, but they didn't define us. We were ready to embrace our future, one day at a time. Life in Seaview was idyllic. Rachel and I quickly settled into our new routines, making friends in the community and exploring the beautiful coastal surroundings. Despite the ongoing investigation, we felt a sense of peace and happiness that had been missing for so long. But as the saying goes, the calm often comes before the storm. One afternoon, as Rachel and I were enjoying a quiet lunch at a local cafe, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I excused myself and answered, bracing myself for anything. "Alex, this is Detective Harris," a voice said. "I'm working on the case involving James. We need to talk. Can you come down to the station?" My heart raced. "Is everything okay?" "There's been a development," Detective Harris replied. "It's urgent." I hung up and returned to Rachel, trying to keep my expression neutral. I need to go to the police station. There's been a development in the case. Rachel's eyes filled with concern. Do you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, it's okay. I'll call you as soon as I know more. I drove to the station, my mind racing with possibilities. When I arrived, Detective Harris met me at the entrance and led me to a small, dimly lit room. What's going on? I asked, my anxiety growing. We received a credible threat against you and Rachel, he said, his expression serious. James's associates have caught wind of the investigation. They're not happy, and they want to make sure you don't testify. A cold fear gripped me. What kind of threat? An anonymous source warned us that they're planning to target you both. We can't take any chances. We're arranging protective measures, but you need to be extremely cautious. I nodded, trying to process the information. What do we do? We're going to assign officers to keep an eye on you, Detective Harris explained. And we need you to stay vigilant. Don't go anywhere alone and avoid any routines that could make you an easy target. I thanked him and left the station, my mind a whirlwind of fear and determination. I called Rachel on the way home, explaining the situation as calmly as I could. When I arrived, she was waiting for me on the porch, her face pale. Alex, what are we going to do? We'll follow their advice, I said, taking her hands in mine. We'll be careful, and we'll get through this together. The next few days were tense. We altered our routines, stayed in touch with the authorities, and tried to go about our lives as normally as possible. The police presence was reassuring, but the fear of the unknown lingered. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, I heard a noise outside. My heart pounded as I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet and crept to the window. Peering out, I saw a shadowy figure moving near the edge of our property. I called the police immediately, and within minutes, officers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The figure was gone, but they found evidence that someone had been watching us. A discarded cigarette butt, footprints in the dirt. Rachel was shaken, and I felt a surge of anger and protectiveness. We can't keep living like this, she said, her voice trembling. We won't, I promised, holding her close. We'll find a way to end this. The next day, I met with Detective Harris again, urging him to speed up the investigation. He assured me they were doing everything they could, but it was clear that the threat was real and immediate. That evening, as Rachel and I sat on the porch trying to enjoy a quiet moment, my phone buzzed with another message. It was from an unknown number. Stop talking to the police, or you'll regret it. I showed the message to Rachel, her eyes widening with fear. What are we going to do? We're not going to let them intimidate us, I said firmly. We'll keep cooperating with the authorities and we'll stay strong. We're not backing down. We notified Detective Harris about the message, and he increased the police presence around our home. The days that followed were a blur of anxiety and constant vigilance. But through it all, Rachel and I remained united, our bond growing stronger in the face of adversity. One afternoon, as we were walking along the beach, Rachel stopped and looked out at the ocean. Do you ever wonder if we'll ever be truly free of this? I took her hand, squeezing it gently. I do, but I believe we will be. We've come this far, and we're not giving up now. She smiled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. I believe that too. As long as we have each other, we can face anything. That night, as we lay in bed, I held Rachel close, feeling a deep sense of love and determination. We had faced so much already, and I knew there were more challenges ahead. But we were stronger together, and I was ready to face whatever came our way. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but feel that the storm was finally beginning to pass. And in its wake, there was a calm, a promise of better days to come. The days stretched into weeks, and the tension around us remained palpable. Despite the increased police presence, Rachel and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside set our nerves on edge. We knew James's associates were out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One evening as we sat on the porch trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace, My phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from Detective Harris. "We have a lead. Can you come to the station?" I showed the message to Rachel, her eyes wide with worry. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, it's better if you stay here. I'll call you as soon as I know more." She nodded, her grip on my hand tightening. "Be careful, Alex." At the station, Detective Harris greeted me with a serious expression. "We managed to track down one of James's associates," he said, leading me to an interrogation room. "He's willing to talk in exchange for a deal." Inside the room sat a man in his 30s, his face pale and sweaty. He glanced up as we entered, his eyes filled with fear. "I don't want to go to jail," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll tell you everything I know." "Start talking," Detective Harris said, taking a seat across from him. The man, whose name was Derek, began to spill everything he knew about James's operation. He confirmed that James had been targeting wealthy, vulnerable women for years, using charm and manipulation to extort money from them. He revealed names, locations, and details that painted a horrifying picture of a widespread network of deceit and exploitation. As Derek spoke, I felt a mix of anger and relief. We finally had the information we needed to bring down James and his associates. But the knowledge of just how many lives they had ruined was sickening. When Derek finished, Detective Harris turned to me. "This is a significant breakthrough. With this information, we can take down the entire operation, but it's going to take time and resources." I nodded, my resolve firm. "Do whatever it takes. These people need to be stopped." As I left the station, I called Rachel to update her. She listened quietly, her voice steady despite the fear I knew she was feeling. "I can't believe how deep this goes," she said, "but at least we're finally making progress." "Yes, we are," I agreed, "and we're going to see this through to the end." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The authorities launched a series of raids based on the information Derek had provided, arresting several key figures in James's network. The media caught wind of the story, and it quickly became a national sensation. Reporters camped outside our house, eager for a statement, but Rachel and I remained focused on our safety and the ongoing investigation. One evening, as we were having dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from Detective Harris. "We've arrested James's top lieutenants," he said, his voice filled with triumph. "The operation is falling apart. It's only a matter of time before we get everyone involved." I relayed the news to Rachel, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a genuine smile on her face. "We're almost there," she said, her eyes shining with hope. "We're going to get through this." But even as the walls closed in on James and his associates, the danger remained. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. We rushed downstairs to find a brick had been thrown through our window, a threatening note attached to it. "Stay out of our business or you'll regret it." Rachel's face paled as she read the note. "They're getting desperate," she said, her voice trembling. I called the police, and they arrived within minutes, securing the area and taking the note as evidence. Detective Harris called later to reassure us. "We're close, Alex. Don't let them scare you. We're going to get them all." Despite his reassurances, the threat weighed heavily on us. We took extra precautions, installing a state-of-the-art security system, and even considering moving to a safe house until the investigation was complete. But we ultimately decided to stay. We wouldn't let them drive us from our home. One morning, as we sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee and trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. "We've come so far," she said softly, "and we're almost at the end. I know it's been hard, but I believe in us. We're going to come out of this stronger." I squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of gratitude and love. "I believe that too, Rachel. And no matter what happens, we'll face it together." A few days later, I received a call from Detective Harris. "We got him," he said, his voice filled with relief. "James has been arrested. He's in custody, and he's not going anywhere." The news hit me like a wave of relief. James, The man who had caused so much pain and turmoil was finally behind bars. I thanked Detective Harris and hung up, turning to Rachel with a smile. "They got him," I said. "James is in custody." She jumped up and hugged me, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We did it, Alex! We really did it!" As we celebrated, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us here. The betrayal, the fear, the uncertainty, it had all led to this moment of triumph. And while the road ahead would still have its challenges, I knew we were ready to face them. That evening, as we watched the sunset from our porch, Rachel leaned her head on my shoulder. "I feel like we can finally breathe again," she said. I nodded, wrapping my arm around her. "We've been through hell and back, but we made it. And now we have a chance to build something beautiful." As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace and hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. The storm had passed, and in its wake we had found each other. Our future was bright, and I knew that together we could face anything that came our way. With James behind bars and his network dismantled, the heavy cloud of fear and uncertainty began to lift. The authorities assured us that the remaining associates were being hunted down, and the media frenzy slowly died down as other stories took precedence. Life in Seaview started to feel normal again, and Rachel and I could finally see a future free from the shadows of our past. One sunny morning, Rachel and I decided to take a walk along the beach. The ocean breeze was refreshing, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing. We strolled hand in hand, savoring the simple pleasures of life that we had missed during the months of turmoil. "It's amazing how far we've come," Rachel said, her eyes sparkling in the sunlight. "Sometimes I can't believe we made it through all of that." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "We did it together, and now we have a chance to build something truly special." As we walked, we talked about our dreams for the future. Rachel had always wanted to open a small art gallery, and I was eager to start a new business venture that could bring something positive to our community. The possibilities felt endless, and for the first time in a long time, we felt truly free. Back at our cozy cottage, I received a call from my lawyer. The divorce proceedings were finally complete, and Rose had agreed to a settlement that left me with a secure financial future. The chapter of my life with her was officially closed, and I felt a sense of relief and closure. "How do you feel?" Rachel asked, noticing the look of contemplation on my face. "Relieved," I said. "It's like a weight has been lifted. I'm ready to move on and focus on us." Rachel smiled, wrapping her arms around me. "Me too, Alex. We've been through so much, and I think we're stronger because of it." As the days turned into weeks, Rachel and I continued to build our new life together. We renovated our cottage, transforming it into a warm and inviting home. We spent weekends exploring the coast, discovering hidden coves and charming seaside towns. Our love grew deeper, and our bond became unbreakable. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rachel turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "What's that?" I asked, curious. "About the future," she replied, her eyes meeting mine. "I love what we have here, but I also think about the possibility of starting a family someday. What do you think?" The thought of starting a family filled me with a mix of excitement and hope. "I'd love that, Rachel. I think we'd make great parents." She smiled, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "I think so too." In the months that followed, Rachel and I embraced the idea of building a family. We started planning for the future, discussing names and dreaming about the kind of parents we wanted to be. Our home became a place of love and laughter, filled with the promise of new beginnings. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew cooler, Rachel surprised me with news that would change our lives forever. She handed me a small wrapped package, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "What's this?" I asked, curious. "Open it and see," she said, her smile widening. I carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a small, hand-painted onesie. It took a moment for the realization to sink in, and when it did, I felt a rush of overwhelming joy. "Are you?" I asked, my voice catching in my throat. Rachel nodded, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Yes, Alex, we're going to have a baby." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as tears of joy filled my eyes. "This is incredible. I can't believe it." As we stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, I felt a sense of completeness that I had never known before. The journey that had started with betrayal and pain had led us to this moment of pure happiness. Our love had survived the darkest of times, and now it was bringing new life into the world. The months of Rachel's pregnancy were filled with anticipation and excitement. We prepared our home for the arrival of our little one, decorating a nursery and filling it with love. The support from our friends and the community in Seaview was overwhelming, and we felt truly blessed. One beautiful spring morning, our baby girl was born. Holding her for the first time, I was overcome with a sense of awe and gratitude. She was a symbol of our love, our strength, and our journey. Rachel and I named her Hope, a tribute to the journey we had endured and the future we were building together. As I looked into her innocent eyes, I knew that everything we had gone through had led us to this moment of pure joy. As the years passed, our family grew and flourished. Rachel opened her art gallery, and I started a successful business that brought new opportunities to our community. Our home was filled with laughter, love, and the sounds of our growing family. Through it all, Rachel and I remained each other's rock, facing life's challenges with unwavering support and love. The pain of the past had transformed into a beautiful tapestry of resilience and hope. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset with our children playing in the yard, Rachel turned to me with a contented smile. "We've come so far, Alex. I'm so grateful for everything we have." I took her hand in mine, feeling the warmth of her love. "Me too, Rachel. Our journey has been incredible, and I wouldn't change a thing." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over our home, I felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. We had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future with open hearts. Our love story, marked by trials and triumphs, had led us to a life of happiness and love, and as we looked toward the horizon, we knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, hand in hand.